watching News Central TV. Hello and welcome. I am Judith at TV. Here are the stories making headlines beyond the continent. Electoral victory confirmation for the president. That's President Vladimir Putin. And we begin in Europe, where Russia has officially formalized President Vladimir Putin's victory in last week's presidential election, despite sharp criticism from the West and independent Russian observers. Now, the election, labeled by critics as the most corrupt vote in post-Soviet history, saw Putin secure an easy victory for a fifth Kremlin term, facing no significant opposition. The three-day vote, which took place last weekend, also included occupied Ukraine, occurring 2 years into Moscow's offensive. Now, according to Russia's electoral chief, Pamfilova, the final results revealed Putin's overwhelming victory, capturing 87.28% of the vote. Pamfilova hailed the election as historic, extending Putin's 24-year rule by another 6 years.
Итоговая явка на выборах президента Российской Федерации составила 77,49% от числа избирателей. Вот немножко она у нас выросла на 0,05, да, включенных в списки избирателей. В абсолютном исчислении, выражении в выборах приняли участие 87 миллионов 576 тысяч 75 избирателей. Большинство было сохранено бюллетеней, и они были учтены, и всего в итоге пострадало всего 36 бюллетеней. 36 бюллетеней. Это избирательная кампания, еще исторические выборы президента Российской Федерации, как мы уже все об этом неоднократно говорили, которые больше, чем выборы, а это то огромное политическое событие, результаты которого высокопоставленные западные чиновники поспешили заявить. Выборы не демократичны, выборы не свободны, выборы нелегитимны, ну и так далее, весь набор причитаний, обычных причитаний. Мы это слышали не раз. Они в том числе готовят свои предложения, как раз направленные на усиление, на развитие России. Пророссийская оппозиция. То, что касается всего остального, работающего на Запад, это антироссийская позиция в нынешних реалиях, когда идет откровенная война, не нами объявлена.
And in the meantime, Commander-in-Chief of the Swedish Armed Forces, Mikael Biden, has warned that Europe faces the most serious security situation since the Cold War. Speaking at a joint press conference on Thursday with his French counterpart, Mikael stressed that the region's leader must not let the war in Ukraine to become something of a novelty. And moving on from that, and this time to Ukraine, where Hungary, and Slovak foreign ministers have declared their country's refusal to provide military aid to Ukraine under the Czech initiative. Now, speaking in a press conference held in Prague, Slovak's Jovrak Blanar emphasized that his country believes the conflict in Ukraine lacks a military solution and will instead focus on humanitarian aid and non-lethal equipment support. This comes as Czech Republic initiated an international effort to raise funds for purchasing up to 800,000 artillery shells to be sent to Ukraine within a few months.
Will not supply any military weapons to Ukraine anymore because we think that this conflict doesn't have a military solution. That's why we don't join this Czech initiative. We are going to continue to help with humanitarian help and also with the non-lethal equipment, especially in demanding where we are very, very strong as a Slovak Republic.
There's no reason to change. Hungary has not and will not deliver any weapons to Ukraine. We do not take part in any common actions which end up in joint weapon deliveries.
We believe that if a victim has been attacked and you call for peace, or you call on the victim to negotiate, what you're in fact, and while denying the victim the means to defend herself, what you're in fact doing is urging the victim to...
More than 30 countries, including major players like European nations, the United States, Brazil, and China, convened to promote nuclear power as a clean and reliable source of energy in a groundbreaking summit hosted by the United Nations Atomic Energy Agency in Brussels on Thursday. Speaking at the Atomium, a symbol of modernity, Rafael Grossi, head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, emphasized the necessity of utilizing all available carbon-free energy sources in tackling climate change. Grossi highlighted the urgency, in addressing critical issues such as financing to further advance nuclear energy. Currently, nuclear power constitutes nearly 10% of global electricity generation, with numerous plants in operation and under development worldwide.
Anytime when it comes to fighting global warming, the challenge we face is enormous. It will require vast, safe, and reliable amounts of carbon-neutral energy. It will require a perspective for sustainable growth. It will require us to have our citizens and industries on board. It will require nuclear energy as part of the mix.
This is not a beauty contest. This is a fight where we have to use all the available, dispatchable, CO2-free energy sources for the common challenge, which is to decarbonize our energy matrices as soon as we can.
Nuclear technology can play an important role in the clean energy transition. I can also see that after the global energy crisis caused by Russia's invasion in Ukraine, many countries are giving a fresh look to the potential role that nuclear might play. So why is this? First of all, of course, to reach our climate goals.
Because it's a low-carbon, pilotable energy and source of electricity. This is why the comprehensive approach in order to deliver this agenda is based for me on efficiency, renewables and nuclear energy. And this is why this alliance is so important and the commitment taken in COP28 is so relevant.
We see nuclear energy as vital to tackling the climate crisis and building a clean, resilient, and reliable energy economy, both in the United States and around the world. It's why the United States co-led a bold pledge with more than 20 countries at COP28.
And on to COP29. In a crucial address at the ministerial climate meeting in Copenhagen, Mukhtar Babayev, the chairman of this year's UN climate negotiations, emphasized the necessity of securing finance before imposing stricter carbon emission reduction targets on developing countries. Highlighting the widening gap between the needs of developing nations and available resources, Babayev underscored that this year's negotiations would place finance at the forefront of climate diplomacy. Now, last year's UN climate talks saw agreements to transition away from fossil fuels, but lacked commitments to provide financial aid for developing countries, a significant hurdle in global climate negotiations. Now, the issue is expected to be a key focus of the upcoming Baku summit, which aims to establish new targets for aid from wealthy nations to poorer ones.
Finance underpins everything. As we said in the global stocktake, finance is a critical enabler of climate action. But it's the growing gap between the needs of developing countries and what is available. And this year, finance will lie at the heart of climate diplomacy. The negotiations of the new collective quantified goal on climate finance are an opportunity to set a new path, unlock funds, and rebuild trust between the parties.
I have to be honest that we were quite surprised with certain parts of the letter. We agree that we need to get working on NDCs, given the deadline. that many countries will need support to develop the NDCs and to implement them, and that we need to work this year across multiple fora, including through the MDBs, to unlock substantially more climate finance. But we don't agree with what the letter calls the, quote, reframing of.
France's Education Ministry has revealed that the Paris region is on edge as at least 30 schools have reported receiving menacing messages along with shocking videos of beheadings this week. According to the ministry, these threats, mainly directed at secondary schools, are deemed serious because they contain justifications and incitements to terrorism. The messages arrived through various digital platforms like the ENT platform, internal emails, and the Protonote software used by the ministry. According to police sources, at least 5 high schools in the Yvelines department received bomb threats, while a secondary school in Seine-et-Marne received a message warning of explosives hidden throughout the premises. Meanwhile, French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal has assured that the government is tracking down the perpetrators of threats sent to secondary schools in the Paris region.
Connu ces derniers mois et singulièrement depuis la rentrée scolaire 2023-2024, des vagues de menaces à l'endroit d'établissements scolaires. Et je le rappelle ici à ces auteurs, ils pensent rester anonymes, mais nous les traquons. Ils pensent être à l'abri, mais nous les sanctionnons. Plusieurs dizaines d'auteurs de ces menaces intervenues ces derniers mois ont d'ores et déjà été judiciarisés. Ils sont actuellement poursuivis par la justice. Des condamnations sont d'ores et déjà intervenues. Je rappelle que pour ce type de menaces, les condamnations peuvent aller jusqu'à 3 ans d'emprisonnement et 45 000 € d'amende. Nous serons évidemment très vigilants avec le garde des Sceaux à ce que la plus grande fermeté s'applique. C'est absolument inacceptable, inadmissible. On cherche à atteindre à la sérénité nécessaire dans nos établissements scolaires pour les élèves, les familles et les personnels.
We'll go on a short break. More stories after we return. Stay with us. We'll continue with the Israel-Hamas war fallout as the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called on European Union leaders to prioritize upholding international law in Gaza amid escalating humanitarian crisis. Now, Guterres stressed the importance of respecting standards outlined in the United Nations Charter and international law, particularly in safeguarding civilians, as hundreds of thousands of Palestinians face severe food shortages and the threat of famine. A warning from a UN food agency indicates an imminent famine in northern Gaza, while Israel signals intentions for a ground offensive in the southern city of Rafah, where many civilians seek refuge. Now, with the death toll in Gaza reaching nearly 32,000, mounting international pressure for a ceasefire underscores the urgency of the situation.
Chaotic world, with the superpowers at odds with each other, we have a situation of impunity where any country or any armed group thinks that it can do whatever it wants because there is no accountability. And when we live in a chaotic world, it's very important to stick to principles. That is the reason why we believe, for the same reasons, that we need a ceasefire.
The head of the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, and that's Filipe Lazzarini, has revealed that he was blocked from entering Gaza over false claim. Speaking during an interview, Lazzarini accused Israel of singling him out and challenged the country's claim he was barred due to mistakes on his entry application. Mr. Lazzarini, who has been to Gaza numerous times before, says he was the only member of his delegation to be blocked by the Israeli defense body Gokat from entering on Monday. Now, this comes as Israel faces pressure for a ceasefire from Western allies, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu remains steadfast in his commitment to a ground invasion of Rafah, where he claims Hamas remaining battalions are hiding. Joining us now to give us a bit more insight on this story is our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Afia, can you give us a bit more background into what has happened to the head of the UNRWA and why this is happening?
Well, the UNRWA is the aid agency that primarily is responsible for getting aid into Gaza. Now, a few months ago, Israel accused the UNRWA of harboring people that were members of Hamas and said that some of their members took part in the October 7th attack. Now, Israel have not actually managed to prove these claims that they have made. But since then, the UNRWA has lost funding from quite a few countries. And of course, is finding it increasingly difficult to get aid across Gaza. And that's really important. It's not just about getting aid to Gaza, but getting it to the right people. So Mr. Lazzarini, like you mentioned there, was blocked from entering Gaza. And it's the first time in the history of the agency that the Commissioner General has been deliberately denied entry into Gaza. Now, he said that it's easy to flood Gaza with food and it's easy to reverse the trend of famine if only his agency, the UNRWA, could actually get the food, get the supplies to the people that it's supposed to by being on the ground to be able to facilitate and have the infrastructure to get the food and everything else, all these supplies, to the right people. That's what the UNRWA does. And without it operating on the ground in Gaza, it's actually contributing to the impending famine.
So heavy fighting continues in Gaza, so as we've seen on ground. What are the worst affected areas?
You're absolutely right in saying there has been continued fighting, especially in and around the Al-Shifa area. The Al-Shifa hospital, where heavy fighting raged as the Israeli operation has continued there for a third day. Tanks positioned around the hospital complex are now moving eastwards along Al-Wada Street. There's also been an increase in airstrikes in Gaza City and other northern areas. Now, earlier on this week, the Israeli army said its troops had killed approximately 90 gunmen and questioned 300 suspects in what it has called is a precise operation in and around Al-Shifa. Now, you will remember back in November, that's when they first raided this hospital because the Israeli military have accused it, in fact, of being a Hamas command and control center. This is an accusation that both Hamas and the hospital officials absolutely deny, but yet the operation in and around the Al-Shifa hospital is continuing.
Our international correspondent there, Afia Hagen there, just talking to us about what's going on with the UNRWA and the Israel-Hamas war fallout. Move away from that now to India, Southeast Asia, where opposition leaders have revealed that the freezing of their bank accounts has left them financially crippled ahead of the upcoming marathon general elections slated to begin next month. Rahul Gandhi, the 53-year-old leader of the Congress party, lamented the severe impact of the government's actions, stating that the party's entire financial identity has been erased. The Congress party alleged that the freezing of their accounts in February due to purportedly delayed tax filings is a politically motivated move aimed at undermining their challenge to the Prime Minister ruling party, and that is Bharatiya Janata Party. Now, Gandhi further disclosed that the party has received additional notices from the tax authorities dating back to filings from 1995 to 1996, worsening their financial woes.
Have been frozen. We can do no campaign work. We cannot support our workers. We cannot support our candidates. The idea that India is the world's largest democracy, it's a lie. It's a complete lie. 20% of India votes for us, and we are not able to pay 2 rupees for anything. Right? And it has been orchestrated to cripple us in the elections. The Election Commission has not even...
And on to Colombia, where its president, Gustavo Petro, on Thursday delivered a stern message to the main dissident group of the FARC, guerrilla force. Now, speaking at an event in the north of Tiraliata in northern Colombia, the president urged the rebel group to lay down their arms and embrace peace, warning that continued violence would lead to their downfall. Now, we emphasize the importance of choosing the path of peace to avoid the tragic end met by notorious drug lord Pablo Escobar, who died in a prison shootout, or rather a police shootout in 1993.
Allí en el EMC tienen que saber decidir ya. O se van por el camino de Pablo Escobar y el Estado los enfrentará.
The United States Department of Justice has filed a lawsuit against tech giant Apple on Thursday, alleging that the company has unlawfully maintained a monopoly with its iPhone, stifling competition and burdening customers or consumers with excessive cost. Now, the lawsuit, supported by several U.S. states, accuses Apple of generating enormous profits by making it challenging for users to switch to more affordable smartphones and devices. Now, this clash between the iconic company founded by Steve Jobs and the U.S. government marks a significant moment after years of minimal government oversight. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland emphasized the importance of holding companies accountable for violating antitrust laws. He warned that if Apple's action had left unchecked, it further or could further strengthen its smartphone monopoly.
Not have to pay higher prices because companies break the law. We allege that Apple has employed a strategy that relies on exclusionary, anti-competitive conduct that hurts both consumers and developers. And as outlined in our complaint, we allege that Apple has consolidated its monopoly power, not by making.
And that's all at this hour. But remember that you can send us your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number on the screen. And do make sure to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Judith at TV.